There we go. Hello, good morning. How's it going? Just gonna grab my smudge stick. Let's see. Very well, thank you. How is everybody today? How was your weekend? Good morning, Jessica. Hi, Sophie. Hi, Christine. Hi, Leanne. Hi, Michelle. Hi, Leslie. Hi, Melanie. Hi, Lori. Hi, Patrick. Hi, Dana. Hi, Paulius. Hi, Michelle. What'd you guys get up to this weekend? I'm still prepping my coffee here. That's what I'm trying to do. I have been juggling like a court jester this week. This weekend was crazy. I've been trying to catch up with clearings. It's funny. I've been doing so many clearings. If you looked at my emails right now, you'd see how I'm sending out about between 15 and 25 reports in a single day. I've been seeing a lot of my mediums recently. Doing crazy. Sometimes I'm even working twice a day with them, with the same medium, trying my best to catch up. And it was funny. We've had so many bookings over this weekend that even though we were cramming them out, we only got like maybe 3 cases ahead. We had 111 pending bookings, and I'm like, all right, let's see how far we can get through these 111, bookings this week. And I spent the whole weekend doing clearings. And then I went last night. Let me see how many I'm at right now. Just out of curiosity. Let's see how many there are now. Because honestly, I worked all weekend and I think I'm still at the same number. So just goes to show. So I spent the whole weekend working, sent out close to about 40 reports, and I have 108 pending records. So there's been a lot of bookings coming through this weekend, and usually I can tell when kind of, things are kind of chaotic in the collective based on how many bookings I get in a single day. Because if 10, 15 people are booking a clearing, then obviously there's something crazy going on in the collective that day. And I think a lot of this has to do with the eclipse and some of the chaotic energy that's coming in from other areas right now. And so everything has been a little bit overwhelming energetically. Does anybody else notice that? Margarita says, it doesn't surprise me. Everything is getting crazy. No joke, Margarita. Everything is getting wild right now. Not just, on a personal standpoint, but as the whole collective in regard to politics and disasters and all kinds of stuff. Jessica says, what's with this 3 Atlas thing? Well, have you noticed that every time they hype something up, it's all over the place? And there's usually a few different reasons for that. First of all is fear sells. Fear is very effective clickbait. So a lot of people will see something and be like, oh, I bet you that'll do well. And I must admit, I used to be one of those people myself. Because there would be articles. For many years, as many of you know, I backpacked around the world for 15 years. And I sustained myself through that 15 years by writing articles. And I would share those articles around on social media. So those articles, we knew that if you covered on a topic that was a hot topic right now, that's guaranteed money coming in. Because everybody's going to share it. Everybody's going to talk about it, right? But then if you were to mix in a clickbait, fear-based title, people are like, oh my God, I have to click this. And then you end up making even more money, right? So people build up the hype. That's why we call it fear porn, because unfortunately, that's what gets people clicking a lot of the time. So the news knows this very well. And that's, if you haven't noticed, most of the news articles and headlines you see are all going to be fear-based for that reason. And not only that, but they're trying to use smoke and mirrors too. So they will artificially inflate the seriousness or the risk factors involved with a specific topic, just so they can kind of drum up more excitement, more fear. But it's also like smoke and mirrors, where they're putting your attention over here. If you're looking over here, you're not paying attention to the man behind the curtain, so to speak, right? So it's misdirection too. It's not just smoke and mirrors and confusion, it's misdirection. They're trying to kind of shift your attention away from some things they don't want you to notice about. So that's why I always say, if there's something in the media that everybody is talking about it, and especially if people like the government and NASA and all this want to get involved, they're just trying to scare people. I mean, maybe it's something. Maybe they take something that's true that's happening and twist it into something fear-based. In most cases, though, these things never really amount to anything. It's just, think of it kind of like the UFO scares of last year, right? Everybody was talking about UFO scares. Everybody was talking about those lights in the sky and this and that. And then they disappeared, right? Vanished. With no real concern. I mean, people are just like, oh yeah, did you notice those lights disappeared and the media is no longer talking about it? Wonder why. It was all over the media and then it just poof, vanished without even coming to a climax, so to speak. So this is what happens so often, you know, and I feel like it's the same thing. All these doomsday things, it's just like another rapture. No, I don't think a giant alien ship is coming, because you know why? Because there are alien ships all over this planet. They're everywhere. So, you know what else is interesting? If we were to be able to see it, right? If we, let's say everything that happens outside of our 3D bubble, this is our artificial 3D matrix that's been superimposed on this planet. So if you think about it, right? Everything off-world, everything that exists off-world of Earth is in 5D. All of the galactics, they reside at a higher frequency, a higher dimension, because they aren't being affected by this artificial 3D matrix the way that we humans are. So you would be seeing aliens all over the place if you were actually in the correct frequency, if you were in the correct dimension. So it makes you wonder, like, what is this object that's supposedly in a 3D frequency that's not even within our 3D bandwidth? Does that make sense? So if you catch my drift here, I'm thinking it's something that they're using to scare people. Absolutely. Oh, I love Sarah Bressman Cosme. Her books are amazing. I highly recommend Sarah's books. They're really good. I would start with Hypnotist Journey to Atlantis. That's a really good one. But there's so many different things, different opinions people are going to have about this. So I've had egg on my face a couple times thanks to future premonitions that didn't happen, that I completely believed they would. In fact, the biggest one for me was 2012. Do you guys remember 2012 and that whole fiasco about how the world was basically going to end? Because I had my very first astral projection experience. I was pulled out of body on February 21st, 2012, right? So that was exactly 10 months to the day that we were supposedly going to have some big, huge event that happened in 2012. So I was like, okay, well, that's 10 months to the day that this shift is supposed to happen. And then I found like Alex Collier's work, and I found a whole bunch of different people's work. And many of them were very like subscribed to this 2012 doomsday prophecy. And so I didn't know what to expect. And so I just expected the world to not be the same. I didn't know what to expect because so many different people had different opinions about what would happen. Some people claimed about the 3 days of darkness and all kinds of other stuff. So, you know, I just was like, all right, I guess we'll see what happens. And what happened? Nothing. Absolutely nothing happened on that day. And I was like, well, shit. Okay, I guess it wasn't meant to happen. Or maybe it's off, you know? There's been so many of these throughout the years. And every time I subscribe to even just one of them, I end up feeling embarrassed at the day after. I'm like, well, shit. I got that one wrong. So, just take it with a grain of salt. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. I definitely prefer to be prepared for anything just in case. And even though we had so many different ones of these across I'll believe it when I see it. That's where I'm at right now. I'm prepared for anything. I believe I have enough stuff just in case shit hits the fan. But at the same time, I don't actually expect it to. No, I don't expect much to happen. I don't expect much change to happen rapidly. But then again, I didn't expect COVID to happen either. And my guides, what's funny? I spent years backpacking around the world. I didn't have roots for 15 years. And then 3 months before COVID hit, I had no choice but to come back to the States. I had no other plan. No other plan would have worked. So even though I wasn't prepared for what was going to happen and I wouldn't have been able, could you imagine backpacking around the world during COVID? It wouldn't have happened. It would have been so, oh my God, so challenging. It would have been impossible. And so this is why I feel like you're going to be directed to the place that's best for you no matter what. If the shit truly is going to actually hit the fan, your guides are going to make sure that you are going to be taken care of anyway. You're going to be in the right place at the right time with the right stuff. So there's no reason to be fearful of it. There's no reason to be concerned about what the future has in store, especially because we're trying to manifest the future that we want, not the future that they want. So the cabal is always going to be putting out doomsday prophecies. They're always going to be trying to scare people. They're always going to be promoting the next Y2K or the next fear-based thing because they want us to try and put our energy into what they wish to manifest, the timeline that they wish to bring forward. So this is why I say, you can get prepared for these things. You can take caution and make sure that you have all your ducks in a row just in case. But I would never be fearful about these things. I would never be scared that something bad was going to happen because why would you want to manifest that anyway? So just put all your energy and focus into putting the things that you want to happen into the future. And the thing is, I want to see a new world. I want to see a better world than the one. That's what I'm here to help create in the first place. And I am aware that sometimes the old has to crash and burn before the new can come in and be rebuilt. So that's part of the reason why, I do think that maybe some shit might go down. And that is why I have enough stuff to take care of myself for a while. But I don't subscribe to it as a fact. I don't subscribe to it. I truly believe that we can manifest a better world without World War III. So I don't fully expect these horrible things to happen. Reminds me of back when I had my first astral projection experience and I asked my guides about the future and they said, well, do you want a New World Order? And I was like, no, of course not. I was offended that they would even ask me. Do you want a New World Order? No, I don't want. Of course I don't want a New World Order. What kind of absurd question is that? And they just say, well, then why are you focusing on it? Why are you putting energy into that? Because if that's the kind of future you want, then go ahead. Keep talking about a New World Order. Keep acting about it. Keep freaking out about it and talking about FEMA camps and all these other things that you don't want to happen. If you talk about those things, you're going to put yourself into that reality because that's the reality you're expecting to manifest. That is the reality that you are pulling yourself into with your vibration, your intention, and your expectation. So I'm like, okay, well, I prefer to see the age of Aquarius where everything shifts and changes and we all sing Kumbaya and everything is all happy. And I'm laughing because I know that's not going to happen on Earth, at least not anytime soon. But it would be nice if we saw some progress in the right direction rather than just slipping further and further back towards an apocalypse. But even the word apocalypse has the wrong kind of connotations for these things. Just dropped my spoon. So even the word apocalypse, people think it means the end, right? No, it just means a new rebirth. It means a new beginning. I'm absolutely with Michelle, though. Michelle says we need a break. Yes, we certainly do. We certainly do need a break. Jordan says I was only 12 when Y2K came around. The only thing that stands out about Y2K was the M&M commercial that they were wearing Santa Claus hats, singing the Millennium, the Millennium. You're showing your age now, Jordan. All these youngsters. But with Y2K, like, yeah, there was a panic. And I think a lot of people do a lot of panic buying when they're in a panic. And so what happens when people panic buy? They stimulate the economy. So anytime the government wants to, create fear and division and, start making more money, all they have to do is start putting scare shit out there, Fear porn based stuff out there will definitely get people panic buying. Look what happened with the damn toilet paper. That was seriously, you know what they do? They call it shocks to the system, where they tell you, oh, there's going to be a shortage on coffee. There won't be much coffee. And everybody starts freaking out and they start panic buying coffee because they don't want to run out of coffee. So then they create like this huge demand for coffee. And then if you go look at the stands, the coffee is empty because people are panic buying coffee. And then when they see that the coffee is empty in the store, they're like, oh my God, they're right. There really is a coffee shortage. So people freak out and they buy all the coffee online they can get too. That's exactly what happened with toilet paper. But they do these things on purpose to try and, well, like I said, stimulate the economy, cause all kinds of fear and panic, and to also manifest whatever they're trying to manifest. So just be mindful that, anytime the government's trying to say something, especially if they're getting behind something like galactic wise, like if they're saying aliens or something, like that's when you immediately should be like sniffing around for the bullshit, because there's definitely is some. Cynthia says, my desire is to be on my highest timeline and positivity. I love that, Cynthia. That is the best thing that you could be choosing for yourself and for manifesting your desires for your future. Is just tell yourself every day, I am on my highest timeline. I am living the best opportunity. Because if you think about it, right? It's like one of those choose your own adventure books. And I've used this analogy many times before, but for those 80s and 90s babies who know what I'm talking about, those choose your own adventure books where you basically have like 3 or 4 different stories all crammed into one, and they all have different endings. And you get to choose the ending that you experience in the story based on the decisions that you make. So they'll give you an option. If you want to do this, go to page 13. If you want to do this and this, go to page 25, right? So you skip and you jump around the book a lot, and it's a little bit confusing, but at the same time, you end up choosing the end result of the story, because they could have 3 different endings written out or whatever. And you have so many different opportunities to have a different experience on this earth, because that's kind of the point. So if you want to have an experience where, everything ends up perfectly fine and all is well, you can have that experience. And if you think that there's going to be all hell breaking loose and chaos is happening and the New World Order kicks off, then yeah, there is a reality where that happens too. You can choose that reality if that's the one you want. I don't think any of us actually want that, but there's a lot of souls out there that do. And why they want that, I have no idea. Maybe they're still working on some soul level stuff. Maybe they are so stuck in their ways that that's all they know, and that's what they're going to continue to do. Just keep repeating the same cycles for a while until they decide to change their mind. So I see Sachi is asking the same thing. Is it a comet or a spaceship? All spaceships are in 5D. If you are seeing something outside of our Earth that is in 3D in the same frequency we are, then it is most likely not a spaceship. They hide themselves. They are not in our frequency. Our space around this planet looks empty because we are not in the same frequency as most of the spaceships that come here. They don't have to cloak themselves. They literally do exist at a higher frequency, so they are not visible to our 3D reality, so to speak. So that bandwidth, that 3D bandwidth, only affects Earth. We are in a quarantine. So if you are seeing something outside of Earth that supposedly looks like it's in 3D, it's very unlikely to be a spaceship. So no, I have my money on a comet that's going to pass by like all the other comets, and there's not going to be much fuss. I mean, like I said, I am not able to see the future, and even if you could see the future, you would only be seeing one potential future of many potential futures. So therefore, that is why this future is never truly set in stone. AJ says, isn't the veil thinning though? Absolutely, yes. The veil on Earth is thinning. Yes, it is. It's probably going to be the thinnest it's ever been, or at least in the last 12,600 years, this Halloween. People wonder why the veil is so thin on Halloween. Do you know why? Most people aren't aware of this. The biggest cataclysm that ever happened to this planet happened on Halloween. The biggest cataclysm, the Great Flood. Yep. The death of Tiamat and all of that, and the Great Flood and all that water coming here, that happened on October 31st, supposedly, according to some of these Tagetan sources we have. So that is why the reason why the veil is so thin, because we had the biggest event of trauma. I mean, literally billions of souls were wiped out in one fell swoop. So that is why it is a time where, as you see, we all kind of honor the dead. Yep. What's your thoughts on all the... Hi, Amanda. Nice to see you, love. What's your thoughts on the solar activity and the pending great solar flash? I think anything is possible. Anything is possible. Do I think it's going to happen? I don't know what's going to happen. I don't think any of us really know. And you know what? I don't think the guides even know. I don't think the guides know at all as to what's going to happen. Because like I said, there's so many potential futures. And it changes all the time. Every time we jump to a new timeline, which it seems to be doing bi-weekly, we have a new future or a new possibility. So that's why I say just focus on the future you do want. Put all of your stock into the future you do want. Don't even look at the other futures you don't want. Tara says, where can we learn more about Tiamat and her role prior to the flood? Was she a protector of the planet like they used to project in the latest Kong movies? Tiamat was a planet. It is now the asteroid belt that exists over by Mars, but Tiamat used to be a water planet. It's a really long story. Several of you Starseed veterans were on Tiamat when Tiamat was destroyed, myself included. So I died on Tiamat. I know quite a few people that did. Kat died on Tiamat. So when Tiamat was destroyed, it broke itself apart. It's a long story, but there was a nuclear battle going on the planet. We don't want to get into how that started. So this nuclear battle that happened on Tiamat, all of these 0-point weapons and nuclear technology that was detonated, it created massive waves on this water planet, and it shook the whole planet apart. So when the planet shook apart, all of that water needed to go somewhere, and it was pulled into the rotation of several different planets. Mars was hit the worst because Mars was closest. Mars actually lost its entire atmosphere. So Mars has not been the same since that happened either. A lot of the water came to Earth and went to Venus, even as far as Venus. So all of that water that came here was salt water because Tiamat was a salinated planet. There's a lot of salt. So all of that water came here, and that is why we have saltwater oceans. So the oceans were not here before the Great Flood that pretty much every single ancient civilization on Earth talks about, including Native Americans. The Hopi talk about the Great Flood even. So yeah, that is why every single major religion on Earth, and even including many of the smaller religions, they all believe in a Great Flood. That is why. Charisse just shared an article on that. Thank you, Charisse. So if you're interested in seeing that, there is an article up on my website all about the lost water planet and the Great Flood and how it still affects us to this day. Because there is a lot that happened that, I mean, it changed the entire timeline for Earth. But you know what's interesting, and I've talked about this with some of the guides before, there are other timelines where it never happened. There are timelines where Atlantis was never destroyed. There are timelines when Tiamat was never destroyed. There are timelines when 9/11 never happened, or that the world wars didn't happen. So you chose this specific timeline for a reason. You could have been born at any point in history. You could have had any experience, really, because time is not linear. So you chose to come here right now. Why do you think that is? Why do you think so many people with an interest in awakening chose to come here right now? Out of all the different lifetimes that we could be living right now, it's because this is the time to heal all of that. Many of us are back now from when we died on Tiamat, or died in Atlantis, or died in Lemuria, or Egypt, or I should say Kem, because that's the original name of it, Kem. So there are places that, you may feel very deeply connected to, and that is because you are still working to heal certain traumas that might have occurred in those places, or to release some of the pain that you may have experienced from loss. Many of us are grieving civilizations that there isn't even a trace of them left. We talk about Atlantis because, there were actual people that still had records of it. But there are more than 70 different civilizations that existed on this planet pre-flood that do not have any remnants whatsoever. Their names are lost to time completely, and yet you lived in those civilizations. So if you ever feel nostalgic going to visit a place, there's probably a reason. So many of us are kind of reconnecting with those other versions of ourselves that exist in other timelines and other realities and other dimensions. And that's why so many of these past life resonances are coming up. So many past life triggers are coming up to be healed right now for that reason. So if you've gotten a clearing with me and you look in your report and you see triggered past life resonance, and we explain something that you have been through in the past, then generally that is something that is being called forward right now so you can heal it and transmute it so it's no longer wearing down on your soul. So you will be able to ascend and move to a higher frequency and to get out of this whole 3D quarantine that you've been stuck in for 12,000 years, probably, if you've been here as long as I have. Cynthia says, every time I listen to Atlantis stories or Atlantean music, it evokes so strong memories and emotions for me to the point where I literally have happy tears of reconnecting and also sorrow to miss that familiarity. So Atlantis was a mixed bag, really, if you think about it. Because on one side of things, you had you did have families that had a beautiful experience there. There were very powerful families that existed in Atlantis back then, some of which were magic users, priestesses, you name it. There's so many different people. And then you're going to have other people that have a very different experience of Atlantis. People who were experimented on, or people who were treated as slaves. So, if Atlantis is a place for you that you feel that love and that connection, that is so beautiful. I love hearing that. And if you can connect in meditation, try and connect to the other version of you that exists there. Because everything that's ever happened or ever will happen is happening simultaneously. So there is a part of you that is still in Atlantis right now. And you can connect to that other version of you through meditation or through hypnosis. So I love doing guided meditations and that sort of things to try and connect to those other versions of ourselves, because there's a lot of healing involved there. Not just healing, but you can download skills. You can download gifts from yourself, like an ability to make music or paint. Or to even use things like crystal magic and alchemy and all kinds of stuff, because alchemy was huge in Atlantis. Where do you think all the druids were trained? All those druids that went to Ireland and Scotland and Africa and pretty much all over the world, they left Atlantis and spread out all over to take that knowledge to the ends of the earth, basically. So, just reading through the comments. Today is National Coffee Day. Oh, figures. Well, I'm drinking mostly mushrooms, but that's fine. Fourth turning. Yeah, see, this is what I mean, Mira. There's so many people selling fear right now. I don't even subscribe to any of it. Even if something like bad would happen, I feel like it would happen for a good reason. So I just keep putting all of my stock into believing that things are going to happen the right way that they're meant to, right? Emmy says, I have emotions that I want to cry when the name Atlantis is mentioned. I feel peace just mentioning it. Strange, my best friend in university was Atlant. Aw. Well, especially for those of you who have already been to Egypt and a few other places like Greece, you probably have connections to all sorts of old world civilizations that exist here. In fact, people don't even realize this. And I'm always talking about the Greeks because, you know, the Greek civilization was around at the beginning of Atlantis, too. You know how in Greek mythology, it's more like lore. But in Greek lore, they would talk about all these different hybrid beings and all these old gods and this and that. I had a client the other day who asked for a full detailed, and he had visions of seeing Neptune, of seeing like the god Neptune, like Poseidon, and seeing him like parting the ocean and stuff. And I was like, okay, well, maybe, because he was wondering, like, does that mean I'm Neptune? And I'm like, well, no. So I go and I look into his report, and I asked the guy, can we please just check his Akashic records to see where he was getting these visions of Neptune controlling the waters and all of that. And I asked, like, you know, was that a thing? Like, did people actually see this? And the guys were like, oh, yeah, he saw that. I was like, what do you mean he saw that? And they're like, yeah, he was a Tegetan. He was one of those people. He came to Earth as a Tegetan. He was one of the naughty Tegetans that ended up being one of the Greek gods. They've evolved since then. They're not naughty like they used to be anymore. At least we can all hope. But I think it's very funny, though, that we end up finding out that many of these stories are actually true and that people end up having visions of these things because it is based in truth. He really did see a very powerful galactic using technology to manipulate water. And it looks like a god, if you think about it, right? And I asked him, and I was like, so he knew it wasn't fake, and he goes, oh, no. In the life where you saw Neptune doing that thing, he was actually a human by then. So no, to a human, it does look like it would be real. They said, but if you could see that technology today, how much that you have been conditioned by the television, the guides told me you would laugh at it. I was like, really? They're like, yeah, if you could see the same parlor tricks that they were using to convince humans thousands of years ago that they were gods, if you saw that today, you would laugh at it and be like, psh. You'd be like, that's a hologram. And I'd be like, really? Why would I say that? Because it is. They were using holographic technology. And they could manipulate the elements and things, yeah. Why do you think so many of them carried tridents? Isn't it interesting that our buddy, look at Lord Shiva, for example, Lord Shiva carries a trident. How many ancient gods carried tridents? Tons of them, including Poseidon. Why? Because the tridents were technology. Technology that has far suppressed us. We have been so badly suppressed with technology that it does sound like magic to us. It's not magic, it's science. But we've been so programmed to believe in all kinds of stuff that is more religious based. So anything that they claim to be like science like that is sci-fi. It's fiction, right? It's not real. So it really cracked me up the other day, though, when Zach was like, oh, if you saw their technology, if you saw what they were tricking people with back in the day, you'd laugh right in their face today. You'd be like, no. No. No, you wouldn't be fooled because TV makes it easier for you to discern when somebody's trying to pull the wool over your eyes in regards to technology. So it does kind of make me laugh though, because if you think about it, right, we could have a whole fleet of UFOs land on the White House lawn today. And I don't know if anybody would even believe it's real. Right? Like, I bet you most people, if you were to see a whole bunch of aliens landing on the thing, they'd be like, nope. They'd be like, no, it's either Project Blue Book or it's holographic technology or it's the Russians. The Russians are dressed up in funny alien suits and flying Russian technology. They wouldn't believe for a minute that it would actually be galactic. It reminds me of that time that Nixon went to go and meet with the Tayghetans, right? And Nixon goes up and he sees these women in spacesuits getting off the ship. And he's like, what the? He called them space hippies. Nixon did not take them seriously, not even a little bit. Nixon was like, look at these space hippies coming in to tell us what to do. Why? Because they were women. Because they were human-looking women. They weren't taken seriously. I bet you if it was an octopus that got off the ship, Nixon would have taken it more seriously. A telepathic octopus telling Nixon what to do, I think he would have taken it more seriously than a bunch of women getting off the ship telling Nixon what to do. So funny. Diana says, do you think that Lord Shiva is not a god? What is a god? Are we talking? We need Dr. Scott on this one. Big G or little G? If we're talking big G, then yeah, he is God. You know why? Because everything is God. My coffee cup is God. This is God in coffee form. Everything is God. Everything that exists energetically is God, because God is comprised of everything that exists in all energy. Basically, everything is alive and conscious. That is God. So technically, everything is a God. I'm a God. You're a God. Coffee's a God. Everything is a God. But if we're talking little G sense, whereas you'd be like a even more ascended version of that, then technically, yeah, I do think that God's little G exists as well. Because technically, if you think about it, what would we deem to be a god? Right? Think about it. Would they have to be like Superman? Would Superman be a god? If Superman landed today, would we deem him a god? Little G or big G? Just out of curiosity, what do you guys think? Because I think of Lord Shiva and the others as Superman in a way. Because they are in a way humanoid galactics with 10,000 times more abilities than we may have, because they have evolved themselves up to such a high point in high consciousness, high vibration, plus their human body. I mean, human bodies are so limited. There's very few things you can actually do in regards to what they can do, you know? So yeah, I mean, in a little G sense, yeah, I would consider that he's earned the title to be called that. But at the same time, see, Leslie says substitute God for ascended master. Now, see, this is, if you guys remember, look what happened last time I said something to Siddhartha about this, right? Because if you remember, we were talking to Siddhartha about his other realities, other versions of him that exist in other realities. And I said to Siddhartha, I was like, well, my favorite God would be Lord Shiva. And my favorite ascended master would be Siddhartha. And Siddhartha's like, how do you know I'm not a god? I was like, okay, touche. You're right. I don't know if you're not a god. Maybe Siddhartha is a god. Maybe he's, I don't know, Lord Vishnu or something, but that was another version of him that existed in another reality. This is the quantum nature of reality. Like, good luck making any of this shit make sense completely. So, I mean, yeah, I imagine there are levels. You know, think of it like a video game, right? Or like playing D&D. Your character starts off at a very low level, right? You're kind of getting familiarized with things. You're getting to know different spells and different abilities, and you're kind of working your way up. For all of you D&D people, I know this will make sense to you. So
you're working your way up to higher and higher levels, right? So you can handle bigger and bigger beasties. And this is exactly the same thing that happens in real life. In fact, like I remember Dr. Palmer was talking about how when he first started working with Chen, he asked, there was a really, really big beastie that he was trying to remove from somebody. And the guide he was communicating with said he couldn't do it. And he said, well, can you find somebody who can remove it? Since it is a bigger beastie, can you find a bigger guy to come in and deal with it? And they said, yeah, we have to look for a level 25 soul guide to be able to. He said something like that, like we need a level 25 soul guide to handle the level 25 beastie. And when I heard that in the recording, I was like, what? Level 25 back? Like, how does this even work? And I was like, swear to God, this is just like a video game. Because if you think about it, as you get yourself up to level 25, what do you find? You find a level 25 boss who is pretty equally matched at your vibration, or I should say, at your skill level. And as the guides have said many, many times, as above, so below. As we work our way up higher and higher to those levels, there are equally levels going lower, if you know what I mean. And I mean lower in regards to vibration and frequency. So what level humans are? I have no idea. That's a good question, Jessica. We're probably like level 2. In regards to the big beasties that exist on this planet, we're probably like level 2. And it makes me wonder, like, now I'm looking at Charlie like, what level are you, Charlie? It makes you wonder, like sometimes we have to deal with bigger and more formidable things. So does that mean that we only deal with those things as we're moving up in level? Like, are you only going to get to a certain point when you've gotten to that certain point? Or is it kind of like The Witcher? Have anybody ever played The Witcher? Because those of you who have played The Witcher understand that even though you can be level 5, you can accidentally decide, well, you know what? I'm not going to follow the storyline. I'm going to take a sharp right and I'm going to go check out what that dark forest is all about. And then you go in there and you end up running into a level 60 when you're level 5 and they squish you like one little whack and you're done, right? Earth is kind of like that. It's more accurately like The Witcher. Because you have certain areas where they're going to try and funnel you to those, so you're meeting the right challenge, you're at the right level. But if you go wildly off your path, you can end up dealing with something that is so much more higher level than you that you can end up knocked on your ass. Speaking from experience. As a gamer and also as a human, I'm speaking both. So it's a good idea to be like, okay, that area is a very high level area. I don't think I'm going to go there yet. I'm going to work my way up to that level by doing all of the side quests. So that's what I'm doing too, is I'm trying to focus more on the side quests while also working on the main quest, while also trying to avoid things that I am not ready or leveled up enough to deal with yet. Because I'm not trying to get that from the universe. You guys are hilarious. You're still laughing about the fact that we called God coffee. Well, it is, technically. That means you are God, though. And I think that's the most important thing that you can take away from all of this conversation we've had today, is that you are God. Big G, not little g, big G. If you're a God, little g, we would be having a very different conversation right now. Because most of the little g gods are the ones that are still kind of, involved in what's happening here on Earth. And I certainly do believe that they have earned the title, especially people like this. Like Lord Ganesha. He has certainly earned the title of God, in my opinion. You can have, technically, though, there are thousands of gods that exist on this planet. Thousands, maybe tens of thousands. There's thousands just in India. Okay? We went and did a clearing. So yesterday, I did 2 clearings in Bali. Somebody booked an emergency clearing for themselves in Bali. And then another person booked a clearing, and I went through my list and I'm like, oh, look, another person in Bali. So I did 2 clearings in Bali yesterday. Guess what we found? Weird stuff. Like really, really weird looking demonics. We found some really weird looking technology. We found some just bizarre elementals as well. Like Bali just has the most interesting stuff. And I said to Zach, I was like, can you just describe one of them to me, please? Like, I'm just curious. The one that you're talking about right now, the one that you said is very strange. What does that look like? And he goes, well, it's orange. I was like, it's orange? And he's like, yeah, bright orange color. And so I went online and I typed in God's Bali or Demons Bali, Demons and Gods in Bali. And sure enough, we found like this orange looking creature with these big eyes and big teeth. And I said to Zach, I was like, does it have like weird giant bug eyes? Like its eyes are bugging out of its head? Yeah, it does. I was like, does it have giant teeth as well? Yeah, it does. I was like, how can it look so different to the other galactics that we find around the world? And they said, human belief. If humans believe something is going to look a certain way, they manifest it in the astral. So Bali is filled with very strange and interesting creatures. So that's why you never know what you're going to find the more you kind of do clearings in other countries. And that happens through belief. So if people believe in something, they create it. Same thing goes with gods. Humans believe in demons, they create demons. Humans believe in gods, they create gods. So I asked the question. I was like the other day, for example, I asked about Artemis. Artemis is one of the gods from Greek mythology that are, I should say, from Greek lore. I keep doing that. I need to fix my verbiage when I say that. So from Greek history, thank you, there was a whole bunch of information about different deities from back then. And Artemis was one of the ones that always had a very strong connection. I felt really connected to her. In fact, I have a huge statue upstairs in my bedroom that I brought home from Greece. I just love her. Something about her I just always really felt a kinship to her. So I asked about, it's funny, I even used to like pray to the Greek gods when I was a kid. Like when I was really upset about something, I went to a born again Christian academy and they were very strict. So just to be a little rebel, instead of praying to Jesus when they forced me to, I would pray to somebody else. I'd be like, you can't control who I'm talking to in my head. Thank you very much. So I would pray to all kinds of different people, including Artemis, and like ask her for help and connection and all of these things. And so as I aged, I stopped taking these things as seriously. So I asked the other day, because that guy who saw Neptune, or I should say, saw a galactic who was portraying himself as the god Neptune. And that was real. So in my conversation about that, I asked, I was like, so does that mean the gods are real? Like all the Greek gods, are they real? Yeah, they are. They were real people. Some of them are still kind of around in a certain way. And I was like, okay, so I was like, okay, so can you just explain something to me? I said, does that mean that galactic technically was a god? Were they just a very advanced galactic who used technology? Or do humans believing in a deity or personifying a person into a form of a deity, does that give them extra power? And they said, oh yes, big time, hugely. So you will have what we originally start with as the galactic, right? So you can use Neptune, I guess, is a good example since we were already talking about him. So you do have a living, breathing being that came here with technology that was making people believe that he was a god. He was an alien who had all kinds of technology and powers that were far preceded what humans could do, but that didn't make him like an actual god. However, convincing thousands of humans all over the world that he is a real person, that he was a real deity, and even getting those people to worship them creates an alter ego that is actually separate to the original vessel, if that makes sense. So you have another good example of this would be Yeshua, because Yeshua was the original archetype for Jesus, right? Yeshua was a living, breathing person. In fact, he's still around. He hangs out with us all the time. So Yeshua ends up becoming Jesus because they ended up giving him a new name, right? And so all these people are praying to Jesus, and giving all of this power and attention and energy into Jesus, right? So where does Yeshua end and Jesus begin? Are they the same person? Do they have the same consciousness? Just one is more elevated than the other? One is more expanded than the other? But you know what's interesting? Whenever I'm doing clearings and we call in Jesus, we don't end up getting Yeshua. We get a greeter coming in, a greeter pretending to be Jesus. As we've talked about this, there are specific beings that are created by source that is their entire job, is to process the dead, to help bring the dead through and bring them through to the healing place and to help them with their planning stages and all of that. Those are who we call the greeters. The greeters will portray themselves as Jesus if they need to. If that's what gets you to cross the light in a happy way, they're happy to do that. They'll be like, all right, I'm putting on my Jesus cloak today. And they will rock up to the party looking exactly like Jesus. And everybody's like, oh, Jesus is here. And then they all cross over with him, not knowing that there was an actual Yeshua who is the real archetype for it. So Cherie says it's kind of like your real name and your stage name. Not the same. There is the Jesus created, and then there's the Yeshua, the actual. So where does that line get crossed? I'm just curious. Like, where does Yeshua become Jesus? Is that through the belief of the collective? Because if you think about it, I mean, there were so many people that were killed, that were completely wiped out. Entire civilizations were wiped out. So we would start calling him Jesus. He didn't have any control over that. That was the Roman Empire that was doing that. So much of what we create, what we personify, ends up creating something completely different. So which one is the G? Which one is the big G? Which one is the little G? Or are they both little G? Or are they both big G? This is what I'm talking about. These are the kind of conversations I have with myself at night. So this is why I'm constantly asking my guides these tough questions. Chantal says, I don't like that the greeters pretend or portray themselves as something else. Would you prefer the Jesus, the actual Yeshua rock up for every single person that dies that wants to see him? It wouldn't have worked that way. Can you imagine how exhausted one person would be if he had to be the one person to do that for everybody all over the world when there are literally like tens of millions of people all over the world that believe in him? So there's a lot of things I don't like that I would be like, you know what? Let me talk to the manager, Big G. I don't want it that way. I want to change it. It's just been this way for millions of years. Us humans, what do we know? We may not like it, but at the same time, I don't think we understand it enough to formulate an opinion about it. It's great to see you, Jenna. Have a great day. So, I truly believe that people are entitled to believe whatever they want. And in the grand scheme of things, it's kind of all true. Like, people argue about stuff. Like, I argue that this is real. I argue that this is real. I argue that this is real. Then you look at the Akashic records, and in a way, everybody's kind of right and everybody's kind of wrong at the same time. Reminds me what was that one movie? Or was it the South Park movie? I can't remember. I think it was the South Park movie where they were basically in hell and everybody's all pissed off and they're like, what the hell am I doing here? I was a good Christian. I did this and this and this. And another person was like, hey, I was a really good Buddhist. I was doing this and this. Why am I not here? Or why am I in hell? And then the guy at the podium goes, I'm sorry, everybody. Nope. The correct answer was Mormon. Only the Mormons get to go to heaven. Everybody else ends up down here. Sorry, just letting you know. And everybody, the whole crowd was like, "Aw," because they picked the wrong deity. It doesn't work that way. You're not. This is the funny thing about religion, anyway. People are arguing about it all the time, but none of them are 100% right or 100% wrong. There's some truth mixed into all of them. That's the whole point. If there wasn't some truth mixed in, then you wouldn't resonate with any of it. And then none of it would have been believed by anybody. So they have to put truth in there, even if it's bullshit. So there's all kinds of different, people are welcome to believe whatever they want. As long as you aren't forcing your beliefs on other people, honestly, you have the right to believe anything you want. You could believe that Yeshua is the brother of Santa Claus for all I care. It doesn't matter. What people believe is irrelevant. It literally just influences the form your greeter is going to take. If you believe in Muhammad, the greeter is going to show up as Muhammad. If you believe in the Easter Bunny, the greeter is going to show up as the Easter Bunny. Reminds me of that scene in American Gods. Great show, by the way. I was so pissed when they canceled it. Where that one lady dies in her apartment. And then Anubis shows up at her door. Ooh, and I got goosebumps as I said that. Anubis shows up at her door. And at first she didn't believe that she was dead. And he pointed to her dead on the kitchen floor. And he's like, well, there you go. And she's like, well, what next? And he goes, well, you remember the old ways. Oh, I got chills all over my arms as I say this. Even down my legs. They said, you remember the old ways. So he took her to the scales. And it was like this whole big, thing about, I can't even talk about the scene without, I'm literally have head to toe chills right now. So talking about it. So because her belief, because she had that, the true belief about being, because she was Egyptian, she believed in the Egyptian rite of passage after death. And so that is what Anubis took her to experience. So whatever you believe, you're going to experience. And if you truly believe that, Margaret says, I would love J.R.R. Tolkien to be my greeter. If you ask for it, you never know. So it just goes to show, whatever you believe, it's okay. You're going to end up in the right place for you anyway, no matter what. Yes, he was weighing her heart for Mott. Yes, I remember that now. Yes. So, many of us are still kind of carrying that old knowledge within ourselves, and that's why we're drawn to certain things. And keep in mind that the greeters really only do that when people are insisting on certain things. Like if they refuse to leave unless they see Jesus, they'll come in as Jesus. If you prefer to see your grandmother, a greeter isn't going to take the form of your grandmother. They're going to bring your grandmother with them when they come to collect you. They're not going to just pop in as grandma and then trick you into think you're talking to your grandma. No, the greeters are more for like I said, pretending to be a deity so that you'll go when you're supposed to go. Simon's had a great question. What if you're an atheist? Who would the greeter show up as? So being an atheist, ironically, is one of the most complicated beliefs you can have. So if you truly believe that when you die, you're going to experience nothing, where it's just lights out, you're in the dirt, everything is gone, it's just life is over. Boop, that's it. Usually you end up going to a void, a dark void. You end up in either, I hate to say it, but even if you don't believe in the afterlife, if you don't believe in the possibility of being an earthbound, sometimes you won't even do that. You'll just go straight to the void and stay in the void. Because if you believe there is going to be a black void of nothingness, then that's what you manifest. So yeah, unfortunately, your belief has a huge impact on what you're going to see and experience when you die. Hence the greeters and the way they are. Is that not true? Do entities not care about the Bible or hearing Jesus's name? If you believe that name holds power, if you are putting your energy and your love and your power behind that name, then yeah, it does work, because you're using that name as almost like a weapon, But if you are using it in a way that you're just like, don't make me call my boy Yeshua. I've said that before. If I were to say, I will call Jesus right now, think I won't. They're not going to take you serious. They're going to be like, huh? But if you start shouting his name and being like, come here, he's going to come. He's going to absolutely come. So it's your energy, it's your emotion that powers your connection to that. Does that make sense? Sarah says, can atheists ever get out of the void? Absolutely. Yes, they can. Usually it takes time, or you can actually pray for them. I hate to say it, and oh my God, my recovering Christian self is like, oh, whenever I say that, but it's true. I have actually seen this, where if you pray for somebody who's in a void, you're sending help to them to go and help them. So they may not believe in greeters or angelics or soul guides or anything, but if somebody that you know is close to you that died, like let's say they died tragically in a car accident or something, and you think they might be stuck, you can pray for them, call your guides in to go to them and help them. Yep. So it really is down to belief. So many people end up in voids, though. That's the most common place to find people that didn't know they were dead, is somewhere in a void, or just wandering around. So I asked the guides a long time ago, I think it was like a year and a half ago. I said, so, and this is, like I said, I'm still a recovering Christian, so there's still a lot of healing that I'm still working on in regards to that. So I asked the guides, who's more spiritually advanced in a way? Who's actually gotten more? So let's say somebody who is an atheist, who doesn't believe in anything, versus somebody who believes in something that's completely ridiculous. Like, let's say an extreme zealot Christian, for example. Like, you know what I'm talking about, the extreme Christians, right? Like, you know which ones I'm talking about, right? So who's closer, right? I fully expected the atheists. I fully expected them to be like, oh, the atheists. No, they told me that the zealots would be the closer, would be more advanced. And I said, how is that possible? How does that work? Because they believe stuff that's so extreme and so like blah, blah, blah. And they said, well, actually, at least they believe in something. They're putting their faith in something. It may not be accurate what they're putting their faith into, but it's still faith regardless. They're still putting their love and energy into something that they truly believe, which empowers that belief. So even though they may not be understanding things to the point that many of others do, because they haven't kind of done the homework, so to speak, but they still believe in something. And that is a huge leap in regards to spirit. You got to have belief. You got to have faith in these things. Otherwise, I mean, you're even going to gaslight yourself. So yes, we will jump over to Astara. I was just enjoying the conversation today. No, I haven't seen that movie, Vicky. I've never even heard of it. Mira says, I do hospice, and every atheist on their last day suddenly believes in God or Jesus. Fear will do that to you. But like I said, it's very interesting that Jesus is always the one that they call in for these sort of, I wouldn't say always, but at least in America, Jesus is the number one person they call into these things. So this is why many of us are still kind of healing, though, is that we have had to deal with religious fanaticism for so long that, finding our own beliefs rather than regurgitating the beliefs of others or the beliefs that, you read in a book, it's a huge leap to be able to think for yourself when you've been programmed for as long as many of us Christians have. I mean, I was a nun in a past life. Like, when I say I've been there, I have. I completely understand how deep the brainwashing can go. But this is also the case as to why we're being, brought to this attention right now, so we can get a deeper understanding for these things, so we won't have to see some greeter in disguise when we pass on. I have a full expectation of who I plan to see on my last day, and I do not expect to see a greeter wearing a Jesus costume. Not even a little bit. I'm going to be hanging out with the real deal. So there are certain guides, the more you connect to those guides and get a deeper understanding for who they truly are, then you remove all the smoke and mirrors that have been put there by programming and religion. Most of us have been, Margaret. Margaret says, I was against religion since childhood, and still I was affected by it in one way or another. Absolutely. I think that we've been affected by religion for most of our incarnations. On this planet, religion has been controlling the show this whole time. So it makes it very challenging for us to kind of step outside the scope of that religion when they control every aspect of it. And at least here in America, we have freedom of religion, but there are other countries where you don't get that option. You don't even get to choose. Oh, I never heard of it, Vicky. I'll have to check it out. Thank you, darling. So any other questions on this subject? This was a fun one today. The church wants people to worship the demiurge. Honestly, please don't take this the wrong way, but I look at Christianity as a death cult. I'm sorry, but it is. If you understand, if you learn anything about necromancy, if you learn anything about, the occult and all the histories and all the rituals that they do, it's a death cult. It is. They are obsessed with death. I mean, even their own symbol is a dead man that they put up everywhere. They make you eat his flesh and drink his blood during rituals. It may be, like wine and flavorless crackers they're giving you, but at the same time, I mean, hello. It is a death cult. I always, people look at me like I'm an asshole when I say that, but man, it is. Like, so sue me for spelling it out for people. And I had to go to school with that every day of my childhood up until, I literally graduated from one of these schools. So yeah, there's all kinds of stuff that we are kind of coming to terms with and healing and digging up a deeper understanding of. And that is one of the reasons why I just want to make sure that this is, an understanding that this is a free space. So you guys can say whatever you want. And if it truly resonates with other people, they're going to be very glad you said that to begin with, because there's a lot of us that feel the same way about religion and all the control that comes along with it. Cherie said, I used to love the Jesus crackers. We had tasty ones. There's a really funny video I saw a couple weeks ago where there were like these 3 Irish priests and they were trying to come up with new ways to bring in new parishioners because their church was really quiet. They're like, instead of giving them those flavorless crackers, why don't we give them crisps? And the other one's like, yeah, cheese and onion. They'll bring everybody in. It was really funny. And how these Irish guys were basically arguing and saying, no, you got to bring them in. Give everybody potato chips instead. They'll all come running for service. It was really funny. That would get me to church, potatoes. Anyway, I'll hop over to Astara. It was fun hanging out with you guys this morning. Thank you so much for all the wonderful comments and the questions and for keeping the conversation going. It's been a really fun one today. Don't forget that I have the Reiki course up and running. That will be this weekend, I believe. Yes, it will be this weekend. That'll be on Saturday. We're very excited about the Reiki 2 course. Charisse and I have put up the new links. So everything except SRT2 is now able to be signed up for. So if you go on my website underneath classes, you will notice that my astral projection class that is 3 weeks away, that sign up is now there. So if you guys are interested in my advanced astral projection class, that will be available in 3 weeks. And then just after that, we'll be doing SRT1 again. So that'll be a lot of fun. So Reiki this weekend, astral projection class 2 weeks after that, and then 2 weeks after that is SRT1. So for those of you who are interested in attending my classes live, make sure that you sign up. SRT1 has limited spaces, so just be aware of that. So yeah, I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I will see some of you on Astara just now, and the rest of you I will see tomorrow. Have a fantastic day, everybody. Mwah. Love you all. Bye.